It is. Correct.
But my wife giving me the business was nothing about
Oh.
Wednesday, December the 13th, we are live at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, every Monday through Friday. It's WagerTalk Today here on WagerTalk TV, and we're going to keep it going as we get closer to football this week. NFL football tomorrow and Thursday, college bowls this Saturday, NFL Saturday and Sunday. Do some college football talk. Also going to do some basketball talk here on WagerTalk Today with Adam Trigger, and also going to break it down with Eric Pauly from thegoldsheet.com, talking some Thursday NFL player props. Sunday NFL. Adam Trigger's going to look at some college hoops, some NFL. Teddy's got a What Bettors Learn, which is going to be very interesting. Stay tuned for that one. It's a little bit different than normal. And also a big game breakdown, NBA style. I am Steve Merrill, filling in for the Prez. He remains in Las Vegas. He's trying to get back over the border to customs. We'll see if he is back tomorrow. We make it 50-50. And my co-host Teddy Covers is here as always. And let's bring on our first guest, Adam Trigger, college basketball expert, number one last year in college hoops at WagerTalk.com. And Adam, welcome to the show. How have you been doing, my man?
Pretty good. College hoops been fine. Long Island got the money last night. Big number there, and they covered. So, up over 90 units in college hoops since the beginning of last season. And I'll say this until I'm blue in the face. It's not like it used to be. November and December are harder now in college hoop, in my opinion. So you can kind of battle through the first 2 months of the year. I feel like it only gets better from that point. I got a college hoop play I love tonight. It's up on my page. I'm going to talk about another one on the show, and I've got a 4% NFL to share with you guys as well.
Well, let's talk. And this is a fun game for tonight. It's mid-majors, so it's not the marquee matchup that some casual bettors like to look for, but this should be a fun one. Utah State, 9-1 to start the season. Santa Clara, 7-3. Two good mid-majors. They're meeting at Santa Clara tonight. The Aggies are road favorites. I'm seeing -1.5, total 152. Looking at that Wager Talk Live odds screen. How do you break this one down? Broncos versus Aggies.
So let's start with that -1.5 because that's a pretty drastic line move. 2-point move from what it was early this morning, which was like 3.5, 4. Could mean one of a couple things. Could mean one, and I know the computers and some of the analytics like Santa Clara, so that's a reason. 2, one of these groups played it and moved the line. Or 3, which would be the one I'll focus on here, which is the most concerning, would be that someone might be out for Utah State. To be honest, I could care less about the first 2, but an injury to Utah State could be pretty significant because Utah State, they play rough. They pretty much play their 6 guys. The bench will get involved here and there, but that top 6 for Utah State's pretty much set in stone. And so, if this is a team where if they were to lose one or two out of their starting lineup, I think, especially you've already referenced Teddy, they're 9-1. I'd be willing to go against them. Now, the guy it might be is Max Agbampolo. He's not someone that's going to jump off the stat sheet as a huge contributor, but he is their best perimeter defender. And if he were out here, I would say that would be significant because you need to guard the perimeter against Santa Clara because this Santa Clara team can score and they can shoot the three. Now, Santa Clara is another team that I've been wanting to jump in with for a couple of reasons. So Herb Sendek's done a really good job here. This is going to be his 8th season. But specifically this year, I have my eye on this team coming into the season as, one that could potentially go either way. Now, Santa Clara, they've lost a lot of talent from years past. I believe they lost all 5 of their starters this past year. But the players that Sendek brought in were very intriguing to me. And he's been a guy that's been a great evaluator of offensive talent. Last couple seasons, he's had guys go to the NBA. And so when he brought in guys I was familiar with, Jalen Benjamin from Mount St. Mary's, Johnny O'Neal from American, amongst others, this was a team that I knew I was going to want to play on at some point. The reason I haven't really played on them yet is Herb Sendek has gone to the Frank Martin playbook a little bit of we're just going to play everyone for the first couple months of the season. We're going to see what we've got. We're going to go 11 deep. And so, the results have been decent. They have a nice win over Oregon. But I'm waiting for him to sort of tighten up his rotation a little bit and to really get what I think will be the best version of Santa Clara, which is what I think we'll start to see come conference play. Now, this is a big game tonight. A win over Utah State would certainly be a feather in their cap. So just based on the fact that I think Santa Clara is a play on at this point, just because of what Sendek's done in the past, and the fact that last year, guys, Santa Clara ranked 335th nationally in bench minutes. So Sendek wants to get to a point where he's playing like his top 6 or 7. I think it's only going to improve Santa Clara as the season goes on. And if Utah State were missing a guy or two tonight, I would absolutely be on the Broncos in this game.
So we're looking at the Santa Clara side here. I got to ask you, they had the 2 upsets. They knocked off Stanford, they knocked off Oregon. So they had the 2 early season upsets over Pac-12 teams. Since the win over Oregon, they played 3 line games. They've lost each of them by 15 points or more. Not exactly a team that's in good current form. Does that concern you here? Because it's been 3 weeks since they beat anybody.
I think they can get up for this game. Of course, it's a home game. So some of those other ones were road. I believe they played at a neutral over the weekend. I think their most recent game was on a neutral venue. So I think the home, going back at home, this tends to be a tough place to play, at least in the context of like West Coast Conference play on a year-to-year basis. Again, what I'm looking for specifically from Santa Clara is Sendek to sort of commit to like a 7 or 8 man rotation. Because I see guys like Benjamin, who I really liked at Mount St. Mary's. Johnny O'Neal was a Patriot League guy before he went out to Santa Clara. They're only playing like 18, 19 minutes a game. And so, if you've ever played, like some of these guys need more minutes to get into a rhythm. And I truly believe that a lot of these mid-major coaches have gone to the mindset of, if they're not going to put us in the NIT and it's going to be almost impossible for us to like get at large bids by winning in November and December. Let's play out November and December, really seeing what we've got, and then we'll go for it in the later months of the year. I think Santa Clara might be doing that a little bit, but this is a big game for them. Utah State has become a name opponent at this point with the start that they've had. So I think you see Santa Clara really play this one to win, and I think they get it done.
Adam Trigger talking some college basketball here on WagerTalk TV. And, of course, Adam will be on the college basketball show tomorrow and Friday live at 2 o'clock Eastern. Be sure to check out the college basketball show the next 2 days for more college hoops from Adam Trigger. But, Adam, while we got you, I want to turn to the NFL now. And we're going to have a player prop from Eric Pauly coming up a little bit later for the Thursday night game, Chargers-Vegas. But let's look at a Sunday game. This is one of the more important games this week in the NFL, even though Jacksonville a bit shorthanded. Jacksonville-Baltimore flexed into the Sunday night spot. Was originally, I'm going to be the Chiefs and Patriots, because if you look at the betting rotation, that's the last game on the board Sunday is the Patriots-Chiefs. I got flexed out, I guess. And this one flexed in the 10-3 Ravens at the 8-5 Jags. Of course, Jacksonville without their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. That's why we see him as a home dog. Is this an overreaction? It's over that key number now, plus 3.5. How are you playing this one Sunday night, Adam?
Yeah, I think the Jaguars are in a great spot here. I think the fact that it gets flexed to the primetime game makes it an even better spot for them. So here's the thing with the Ravens. Like, this is a pretty big look ahead spot for them. They've got the 49ers next week. And now you just moving into the primetime slot has now turned this into just the sort of the game of the year for the Jaguars. It feels like their Super Bowl. It feels like one of these games where we talk about it and it's like, well, it's the Jags Super Bowl, and that might be the case. But then you remember that the Jaguars are still like a playoff caliber football team. And you know, for the Ravens, like the Ravens offensively, Lamar Jackson, I still don't fully trust him as a passer. I know he's gotten better, but you know, I don't know that he's got the ability to really exploit the Jaguars' pass defense, which has been their weakness. The Jaguars' run defense has been excellent, and I still think that Lamar needs a little bit of a running game to really open it up for the Ravens, to be able to pass the ball. The other thing here with the Ravens is they're going to give up they're going to give up yards here. Like this defense has looked poor in recent weeks. So when I just look at this, and also I expect, I think Lawrence is going to be fine. Like I think he's going to be able to play here. He played banged up last week and was okay. So I think the Jaguars are probably the right side, and I think they get it done in this game.
So the loss of Christian Kirk for Jacksonville's offense, in my mind, is absolutely huge. All right, Kirk was Trevor Lawrence's go-to receiver on third down. He was his go-to guy in the red zone, and Kirk now out for the Jags. It really showed last week. And I know that the box score numbers look good with Jacksonville coming from behind and executing in the red zone, but Cleveland was in control of that game. And the Jags were trying to steal one and again, efficient in the red zone. But when you talk about Jacksonville, and this is the biggest game that they've had, or one of the biggest games they're going to have all year, the Jags home field, I've got it as one of the weakest home fields in the NFL. And you look this season again, not winning, not covering at home. All their success, all their point spread success has been on the highway. Baltimore's a veteran team. We've certainly seen them go on the road and beat up on teams. Is this a situation where the home field is a big part of your handicap? And if so, why?
So I think the home field is going to be bigger than it normally is. I'll take this from my pal Drew Martin. He talks about these Florida fans all the time, how fair weather they can be. And the fact that this is now, you're getting later in the season, I think this is where the Jaguars fans start to show up. We've talked about, like, you go back to other sports. I always laugh when, like, Drew was at, like, a Panthers playoff hockey game, because, like, it's kind of the same thing. There's no one there all year, and then it gets to the end of the season, gets to the playoffs, they've got a full building. So just the fact that this got put in prime time, I think I'm willing to give the Jaguars a pretty big bump for home field because of that. It's now one of the biggest games of the week, and I think you get a solid crowd. And I'll just go back to the Ravens being in this spot, coming off of a win over the Rams that they maybe, didn't fully, that they could have easily lost that game. They've had a little bit of good fortune recently with Burrow going down a couple weeks ago and getting a win that was probably easier than it probably would have been had that not happened. And then they've got arguably the game of their season, the matchup of their season with the 49ers next week. It just seems like a big ask for them to go on the road and not only win, but win by margin.
Adam Trigger talking some NFL, talking some college basketball here on Wager Talk today. Adam, what else you got going on at WagerTalk.com?
Yeah, so that's the only NFL game so far that I've locked in for the weekend is the Jaguars, but I will have others. I've got quite a few. This will probably be one of my bigger NFL cards in recent weeks. I've already started to post bowl games, and college basketball has been rolling since the beginning of last season. I have a 4% college basketball play that goes tonight, and that's up now on my page.
Adam Trigger, WagerTalk.com, college basketball expert, also pretty darn good in the NFL, and you can catch him once again tomorrow and Friday at 2 Eastern on the College Basketball Tip-Off Show. And don't forget, you can also catch me and Teddy Covers on the NBA show throughout the week. That's at 4:15 Eastern every weekday, Monday through Friday here on Wager Talk TV. All right, Teddy, one of the things I love about WagerTalk.com, we say it's a family. It really is. I mean, we all treat each other like family members, good and bad. We razz the Prez. He's like that little stepbrother, right, that everybody has. But one thing I did love about the meet and greet last year is obviously meeting everyone in person. And I'd met your family before, but it had been probably over a decade. Hadn't seen Isaac. I'm not sure I ever met Isaac. Karen, I'm not even sure you all were married the last time I was out there. So I want to know what you all learned last night of the world of sports betting, maybe of the world of family life, a little mix of both, maybe.
Well, hey, it's every day I got to come up with something I learned, and this is what I learned last night. So the wife's all over me about some shit. I swear, it's one of those deals where I don't even know what I said. You make some kind of offhand comment, and next thing you know, she's mad. It really pissed her off. I'm getting the business from the missus. And that happens sometimes. It's part of life with a partner. We all know, at least the married guys, or no, it's just part of life. Sometimes the wife gives you the business. And, just to the side, can you imagine being married to me? The woman is a saint. Meryl will tell you, she's a saint. Being married to me might actually be worse than being married to Prez. That's not a debate I want to have right here, right now. That's for you in the chat to decide who would be worse to be married to, me or Prez. That being said, last night, instead of just being chill, I lose my shit right back. I go, I'm working for sports right now. I got to pick up the boy from school and drop him off here. I got bowls to deal with. Get off my freaking back. And so we had a big fight. And those aren't fun. And I love her. It's not like I hate my wife. I love my wife. She puts up with me. I don't want to fight with her. I don't want the boy to have to go sit in his room with his headphones on. I remember how shitty it was when my parents fought hard when I was a kid, for sure. I told you guys at the start of December, I'm going to talk about this a couple of times during holiday season. And I wasn't lying. Stress gets to us, especially this time of the year. My wife and I made up, at least I think. It was fine. We slept in the same bed. It's all good. She smiled at me this morning. But be careful out there. Take a breath when you need to, even when you're running hot, and especially if you're not. I'm hitting freaking 70% across sports for the last full month, and almost 70%, 69% across sports for the last full month. And I'm losing my temper with the woman that I love most. So I'm telling you right now, this time of year gets stressful. Breathe. And last thing, that risk-reward ratio for big bets on Christmas isn't great. You can bet, but don't get yourself all beat up Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. Light action works just fine. That's what I learned last night, Steve. How about you?
Well, you'll know if you made up or not if the locks haven't been changed. So go out a little bit later, take a break, and then see if you get back in the house. That's step number one. If you get back in the house, then that's a good sign. But no. I've always talked about balance in life in general, right? And everything's about balance. Handicapping's about balance. And you can work really hard, but if you work yourself into the ground, you're not going to see things as clearly. You're not going to see the forest from the trees sometimes. And nowadays, more than ever, Teddy, there's so much data out there, so much statistics. I think people really have to be careful, too, just from a handicapping perspective, not to get, I say, paralysis from over-analysis. Do you find that something just from a handicapping perspective that you have to deal with nowadays? It's when you and I started 25, 30 years ago, it was about getting the information. Now it's basically, getting rid of some information when you're handicapping.
So certainly when we talk about, in my mind, November, December are the busiest times of the year. Once NBA starts in October, NHL starts in October, college hoop starts early November, and now you're working 4 sports. It's the only time of the year where I'm really trying to work 4 sports at one time. And that's hard. The hardest part for me is compartmentalizing.
Right.
Because I handicap different sports in different ways. My thought process for an NFL game is not the same as my thought process for an NBA game, which is not the same as my thought process for college basketball game. So it's not like I'm going to go through and say, they'll go through the stats in one sport and just seamlessly transition to another. You have to stop. All right, I'm done working with NFL right now. Let's go look at NBA. Stop. I'm done with NBA right now. Let's go look at college hoops. So it's not so much a paralysis of analysis or analysis, where you get stuck with too much data. The problem at this time of year for me is simply time and the ability to decompress and then recompress, thinking about a whole different sport. Because I do my best work when I'm just ruminating about games all day. You're ruminating about today's games and tomorrow's games. And that's when I'm at my best. And this time of year, you're not ruminating on games all day. You're thinking about the next thing you got to do and the next thing you got to do, and let's get this done and let's get that done, and that changes the process. So I'm glad the last month has been great. From a handicapping standpoint, it's been outstanding. From a personal relationship standpoint, you got to be careful this time of year. Everybody gets a little bit grumpy.
Yeah, and there's a little less sunlight, a little less outdoor activity. That doesn't help either. Like
Sure.
you said, it's everything about it comes full throttle. It's nice in the summer when we have baseball only, and it's nice and sunny outside, and no school and everything else. Financially free and focused in the live chat had a good point though. Winning makes a happy house. Definitely gets tougher when you're going through a losing streak and you're doing four sports at one time. And unfortunately, that's something that's going to happen. You're going to have good runs and bad runs, obviously, but that's another reason it's so important, in my opinion, to have everything structured, have a routine every day. When you look at things at the same time, you go through the same process. You make a short list, right, Teddy? You got to get to that short list sooner than later, probably when there's a lot of sports on the board.
And I mean, I'm running good. That's the whole point. In general, I've been winning. It's been a really good month. It's been a good month in NBA, in college hoops, in college football, and in NFL. I'm winning all 4 sports I'm working right now. So it's great in that regard. And again, it would be far worse if I was losing, and I'm still stressed out and losing my shit. So
right.
That's the point. Is that you got to breathe. And I recognize that I was being a big jerk last night. You go outside, and, sorry, hon, and then but you like to come to the point before that happens. And unfortunately I didn't. But look, I always want to be real on this show. I never want to make stuff up. I never want to talk about things not the way they actually are. Sometimes this time of year is hard. And if it's hard for us, I'm sure it's hard for our viewers. It's a stressful time of year. There's a lot of, moving parts. Just breathe. And winning does help.
And, if you're a viewer out there and if you're a recreational player, even if you're a serious player, there's nothing wrong with taking a day off, taking a week off. It's a little harder for me and Teddy because we have clients who are expecting, us to have stuff every day. But if you're playing out there, you can take a week off. The sports will resume.
When's the last time?
Although you took
When's the last time you took one day off, Steve? A full day. When's the last time you took a full day off?
The day after the All-Star game.
Yeah, I mean, it was right in August, right before right before I got back into town after I took a little time off this summer. The last day of vacation was the last day I took off. You don't get days off in this business. It's just how it is. We accept that, and it's okay. I'm over it now. I'm 25 years in, or it's not a business where you get days off.
Right, but what I'm saying is 90% of the viewers, 95% aren't professional sports bettors like you and me, professional handicappers. So they can definitely,
for sure.
Don't feel like you need to play during the holidays, play every bowl game. If you're enjoying it, more power to you. It's a recreational thing, nothing wrong with that. But yeah, the games will always be there. The betting opportunities will always be there the next day as well.
Amen. That's all I have to say on this subject.
One guy that I enjoyed meeting also in person last year when we did the meet and greet was Eric Pauly, and he's a Washington Commander fan. Not my Washington Commanders. But it was nice meeting Eric in person last year. And Eric, of course, is part of the Gold Sheet at WagerTalk.com. And you can find them at WagerTalk. Also, the goldsheet.com, a standalone site. And Eric does a great job with the Gold Sheet. And Eric, I know you love the NFL. Give us a little something here for this Thursday night game. Teddy did a big game breakdown yesterday. I actually did a solo video that'll be up this week for Chargers Raiders. Haven't talked much about player props, though. What's something you're looking at for the Thursday night game?
Yeah, so not really keying in on a side or total here. I mean, the first thought was the under, as I'm sure everybody's was, but then you see an opening number of 33.5, and you probably want to, move away from that as the market clearly gets caught up there. But I'm actually going to Devontae Adams over 66.5 receiving yards. Obviously, a player who garners a lot of attention, and people, want to bet his overs. But if you've been paying attention to the season, playing fantasy or betting props, you know that it's not a great season so far for Devontae Adams by any means. This is actually just a great get-right spot for him. So the Los Angeles Chargers on defense, they are dead last in EPA per play over the middle of the field on defense. Then in DVOA rankings against wide receiver ones, they are 29th in the NFL, allowing over 80 yards per game and 9 catches to opposing wide receiver ones. So Devontae Adams, of course, still is the wide receiver one, and he has a 90-plus PFF grade in the short middle of the field as well as dead center in the middle of the field. And he leads Las Vegas in targets and receptions over the middle of the field. This number, I know O'Connell hasn't been great, but this is just simply too low for a player of Adams' caliber. And when you go back to the first meeting between these two teams back in October with O'Connell at the helm, Adams cleared this number against Los Angeles. And Los Angeles plays the most or more man defense than they do zone defense. And again, Davante Adams leads Las Vegas in targets, yards, and receptions against man coverage, this defense. And there's a lot of, obviously, numeric points I just made there. But I also think that the psyche of this Chargers team can't be great. Like, the season was already pretty much a dead season. Now you lose Justin Herbert for the remainder of the season. Brandon Staley probably doesn't even have a job at the end of this year. And it's clear that this team might not really want to fight for him. So I could actually see a very flat Chargers team come out with, a little bit apathetic in this matchup. So I think that there's a dead team walking, that there maybe is another psychological angle there, that this team is not going to be up and ready to go like the Raiders will be for their interim head coach, who they played better for as the season progressed. So low number, great player, numbers match up, and it could be a situation matchup that works well. So I'm going with Davante Adams over 66.5 receiving yards.
So I'm very much with you conceptually. I did not like the quotes coming out of the Chargers locker room last week. They were talking about the season in the past tense, and that worries me when there's still 4 games left on their schedule. So I'm with you in that concept, but something you said right at the top stood out to me. You're like, my gut reaction was looking at the under in this game. And I made a case right here on WagerTalk Today for the over in the contest. And I'm making a case for the over. I can make a case for Davante Adams over. You're trying to make a case, or you're like, my guts look at the under in this game, but you want the top wide receiver over. To me, that doesn't make sense. Explain.
I'm not asking him to score points. You can clearly rack up yards. The Raiders themselves are a team where defensively they're the kings of bend, don't break defenses. They'll allow you to go from your own 10 to their 10 as freely as you want. Then they lock down a defense. Now, I know that now it's the Chargers who allow a ton of yards. And it's not like a play that I made on the under. It's just where my initial gut would go. But you're not scoring points by picking up yards. You're scoring fantasy points if you're playing fantasy. So while they are correlated, you're moving up the field, it does not necessarily mean that if they go to the 1 yard line, first and goal, they're going to get in. So I don't think that they're actually directly correlated. If I was going for 2 touchdowns with talking the under, then maybe I could build an uncorrelated parlay there and have a crazy payout. But no, I don't think that that's a hindrance on Adams getting yards, is believing that this game will be low scoring. And like I did mention too, I think if anything, the Raiders do have a slight edge here anyway. So I would expect that there are more points to come from one team. It would be from Las Vegas.
It's Eric Pauly. He's part of the Gold Sheet, goldsheet.com. Also find the Gold Sheet and Eric at wagertalk.com. We're talking some NFL. Just covered that barn burner Thursday night game. You guys, I'm sure they wish they could flex in and out of these Thursday night games in the near future here with this Raider-Charger tilt. Let's move to Sunday, though. I'm sure the league wishes they could flex out of the Carolina Panthers in any game. Carolina now 1-12 straight up on the season. But don't look now, Eric. They got a cover against the spread a couple weeks ago against Tampa, but then right back down to earth, 28-6 loss to the Bucs, who had only covered twice all season. Now the Bucs have 3 covers. Carolina still 2-9-1 against the spread. So let's look at the total instead here. A lot of low totals this week, right? This one around 35. By the way, I reached out to Ralph Michaels yesterday. I mentioned this in my preview of that Thursday night game, and it would apply to that as well. You mentioned that total around 34 now. Ralph went to the database, went back to 2007. When the total is 34 or less, 61.5% under over the last 16 years. And when it's 36 or less, 65.5% under since 2011. Now, I think you can make an argument that there's a lot of totals in that range now, so maybe stuff is starting to be priced in, so I wouldn't just blindly play these unders. But what is your thought on this one in particular, Panthers and Falcons? Obviously, Carolina, Eric, a really bad offensive team.
Yeah, so the last point you just made was actually a fantastic point. Like I said, like when I was writing the Gold Sheet on Monday morning, I look at the matchup for Thursday. All of a sudden, I'm thinking under, and maybe in week 3, 4, 5, or 6, that number would have still been 37, and it would have been a great bet. But now that we're in week 14, 15, 16, with all the data that we have, that number's already priced pretty properly in the market, even at open. This is a situation where at open it was 37.5 and was bet down immediately to the 35, 34.5 range, 34 being a key number in totals. But just looking at this matchup, it's just how do these teams really score? The Atlanta Falcons do not score often and do not win by margin. And the Carolina Panthers, all this talk about how bad the Giants offense was, the Jets, the Patriots, those teams finally woke up. This Carolina team has never woke up at all this season. The one good game they had was in Seattle with Andy Dalton under center, not their franchise quarterback Bryce Young. But Atlanta last in the NFL in a neutral pass rate, meaning that they run the football the most in the NFL. Carolina, 23rd in neutral pass rate, meaning they are one of the most run-heavy teams as well. Yes, Carolina's defense is actually 32nd in the NFL in rush EPA, but now that they're playing Desmond Ridder in a team that they know is going to run the football as much as they do, I expect Carolina to be more prepared and more willing and able to stop this run game. And also the Carolina defense is getting healthier as well, so they're going to have some of their pieces back that should help them in the middle there. Atlanta's run defense has not been great lately because of some injuries to key linebacker and defensive lineman David Onyemata. And if those guys are out, I expect Carolina to have some success on the ground. And if both these teams want to just run it from each other's, again, 20 to 20, they're then going to struggle to score points, and they're going to have to settle for field goals because these are not good red zone offenses. And this whole time while they're running the football, the clock is going to be ticking. And also just going in history, I'm not a huge trends guy, but you got to, in division, I think it's a little bit more meaningful. But 5 of the last 6 games between these two teams went in Carolina. I've gone under the total. In just 5 of the last 7 meetings in general, I've gone under the total. I just see a lot of ticking clock, a lot of settling for field goals, and not a lot of explosive plays. And the last thing I will say is for a team like Carolina, and maybe this is the week and this will come back to bite me, but for a team that's so dead and has been dead for weeks, you'd expect some more fake punts, crazy reverses, flea flickers, or some like trick plays to get the offense really going. None of that has been shown out of Carolina whatsoever. So I don't expect them to pull any rabbits out of the hat this week. Atlanta runs the football. I don't think there's going to be a lot of points scored on Sunday.
So Atlanta's defense has shown a lot of cracks lately. We certainly saw it last week against Tampa Bay where they couldn't get stops. They couldn't stop the run against a team that hadn't been able to run the football. We saw it against Arizona. We saw it against Minnesota. We saw it against Tennessee when Tennessee couldn't move the football against anyone. So there are clearly some defensive issues for Atlanta. Carolina's defense, too, is starting to show cracks right now. I know they had a good yardage game against New Orleans last week, but a Saints team that had struggled in the red zone all year, touchdown against Carolina. Do you worry at all about, I know that these two offenses are struggling, but so are the Ds. Do we worry about these defenses giving up TDs in this one? Because they don't have to give up a lot of TDs to get up over 35.
Yeah, so I'm not really worried about Atlanta's defense giving up a ton of touchdowns. Obviously, that's not a hot take by any means. If you just watch Carolina, how they operate on offense, they're one of the most inept offenses I've seen in recent memory. Could be some bias there, but like how the Jets again and Giants and Patriots both scored all 20 plus, Jets scoring 30 plus points. Like there's just no way that I see that happening, barring a defensive score for this offense. They don't have any sort of playmaking ability there. But then I think that the Atlanta defense, it's going to come out a little bit more to the injury report. Like they have pretty good season-long metrics on defense, Atlanta, but they were dealing with some of these unsung kind of guys. Like Grady Jarrett's already been out for a while. And David Onyemata, not a guy who's a household name, but PFF, he was a top 5 rated run defender in the middle of that defense there. So I think that it's going to be a game where Atlanta needs to win this one. Like for the division, they blew last week's game, but they needed to win. So I don't expect them to play down to their opponent. And like I mentioned, Carolina is just so inept, and they're not even doing anything to get creative. You see Arizona running these fake punts or these trick plays going for it on 4th down very often because they're just trying to get something going because they know it's a lost season, doesn't really matter. Carolina has not done any of that. So, no, I'm not really concerned about these teams getting in the end zone, barring defensive scores, which, sometimes I just tip your cap to.
It's Eric Pauly, part of the goldsheet.com. Also find the Gold Sheet at wagertalk.com. And Eric, so you guys have a free play up in the college bowls for next week right now at Wager Talk on the Gold Sheet page. And tell us a little bit more what people get at goldsheet.com.
Yeah, so goldsheet.com, obviously bowl season is here. We are breaking down the games every single week. The NFL, again, of course, that comes out Tuesday around noon Eastern. You'll have a full breakdown with the NFL, 4 to 6 picks of best bets just on the NFL. This under was a newsletter pick. And if you have the newsletter Tuesday, you might even be able to get in on the under at like a 36 now that the market has moved a little bit. But on wagertalk.com, we do have our second 5% play of the season. We hit our first one a couple weeks back with the 49ers against the Birds. And we have actually found just our second of the season, a very selective team with the Gold Sheet, but we have a huge edge on this 5% play. And that's also 5% all access. You get that 5% best bet for Sunday, as well as every single play we have for Sunday's slate.
Not a bad deal. Everything $39 all one-day access for WagerTalk.com. That's the Gold Sheet. You can also check them out at goldsheet.com. That's Eric Pauly joining us today on Wednesday. Teddy, it's an interesting transition here. We haven't talked NBA yet, but we just talked about how low all these NFL totals have been in recent weeks, including that Carolina-Atlanta game. But it works the other way, right? I've always said bet the low totals under, bet the highest totals over. Well, the Indiana Pacers have made you a lot of money this year if you've taken that premise. I think, 14 straight overs a couple weeks ago. Then they make a little bit of a defensive run in the in-season tournament. Went under, all 3 games, I believe, in that in-season tournament during the elimination round. Quarterfinals, semifinals, they eventually lost to the Lakers last Saturday. And then they come right back on Monday, and they go over the 247.5 with, about 254 points, I think, back in regular season play. So I'm curious your take on this game tonight. Pacers at Bucks, be a good one for a little big game breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, that Wager Talk Today, we aim to be your sports central for gamblers. So we're trying to do some college hoops, some NBA, some college bowl, some NFL, and some NHL as much as we can. Obviously, we do the UFC as much as we can to talk about different sports throughout the course of the show. So we don't have anyone talking NBA today. I'll talk NBA today. Big game breakdown time. Let's talk the Bucks and the Pacers. And this is how I do it in the NBA. All right. The first thing I do is I'm going to make my number for every game. Team power rating 1 minus team power rating 2. I add between 0 and 2 points for home court. That's all team dependent. I subtract a couple for back-to-backs. There are other bad situational spots or good situational spots that I might add or subtract a point. But that's basically how it is. Team power rating 1, team power rating 2, home court. And as I do that, I'm already circling sides or totals I'm interested in at my number. So my power rating number for the Bucks Pacers is Milwaukee -4. And at that number, I'm like, this is a great bet. They get a double check mark. This is a game I might make a bigger play, a 4% or a 5% maybe on Milwaukee. And then I look at the number and it opens Bucks 6.5. And I'm like, I trust my numbers in the NBA. And that's why we're talking about this game here not being a 3% or a 4% or a 5% play for the clients. But there are times for sure, even when my numbers say, hey, there's value on Indiana, I don't think Indiana is the right side tonight. The Pacers got the trip to Vegas that the Bucks wanted. The Pacers got their first win back from that trip. It was an awful spot in Detroit. But they didn't play any defense again in that game. They're feeling just fine right now. Milwaukee rested, ready, and coming to play. Now, I don't know if the Bucks defense is good enough. That's why I've been a point or two below market on the Bucks all year. That's why my number is only Milwaukee -4. I haven't trusted them defensively. They haven't been a great defensive team. They haven't even been a good defensive team. I've been betting against them more than betting on them. But tonight's the night to bet Milwaukee. They're interested. And a championship caliber team that's interested at home, lay it or don't play it. Give me the Bucks -6.5. There's your big game breakdown. Back to you, Mr. Merrill.
Yeah, very interesting matchup, and of course, a fairly quick revenge spot, obviously, after just losing to the Pacers in that in-season tournament game about a week ago. So NBA action on the board. Big card tonight. Don't forget, 4:15 Eastern, NBA tip-off Monday through Friday here on the network, and also a college basketball tip-off show each afternoon, today on Wednesday, and then tomorrow on Thursday and Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern here on Wager Talk TV as well. And Teddy, we have a couple extra minutes here, and I've been trying to be a little more active in the live chat since I knew we'd have a little extra time here. People are chiming in. Yeah.
Give me just 1 second, because I have one last thing I had to say about Pacers Bucks. I didn't get it in the big game breakdown.
Yeah, man.
Total wise, because you talked about the total, 258.5. There's no way in hell I would bet this game under. All right. There's going to be pace, and these are two teams that make shots from a total standpoint. Over is the only way I could look at it. 258.5. I ain't getting the betting window with that either. Thank you, Steve. Sorry, I just had to.
It's good to follow up on that. The Bucks, by the way, have now gone over 5 of their last 6. The only one that stayed under during their last 6 games happened to be this Pacer game last week. The Bucks have gone over every other game around each side of that, including that Atlanta on the New York game, rather, the playoff game as well. Had 68 points. They're at 145 at the half. These are not teams you want to be looking to play unders on. It's over or pass, basically, for Bucks Pacers when they get together. And actually, Teddy, I want to circle back to something we talked about with Eric, and I think you probably agreed, and Eric said he agreed, is that Ralph and I have talked about this, and it makes money for decades, both the NBA and the NFL. It worked this year with the Iowa Hawkeyes in college football. If you blindly play the lowest of the low unders and the biggest of the overs over, you make money. The problem is, like, by blindly saying that all the games under 36 have gone under 65% the last decade, we didn't have 4, 5, 6 games a week like we're seeing now priced in that range. So kind of an uncharted territory now. I mean, what would you recommend going forward to these low totals? I mean, is there a time you could start trying to find some value with the over? I know you mentioned that Charger Raider big game breakdown yesterday. I invite people to go back and watch the Tuesday show. You dig into that total. But like Eric also said, I mean, this Panther offense is so inept. I mean, we kind of have to see something first, right?
So conceptually, all right, when you think about how there's a range for totals in any sport. In the NHL, you're looking at what, 5.5, 6, 6.5, occasional 7. And that's it. You don't see a 4.5 in the NHL. You don't see an 8 in the NHL. So there's only so far the markets can move. In the NBA, this 258.5 tonight. The highest total, I mean, it's the highest total I've ever seen. I mean, for an all-star game. Right. I mean, literally, I think it might be the highest total that I've ever seen in the NBA. That's the max. You know, it doesn't go higher than that. You don't see NBA totals below 200 anymore. There's a range, a relatively narrow range for where totals can be priced. Across baseball, it's the same story. You're not going to see 15s, you know, unless they're playing down in Puerto Rico and at that stadium, the totals were 19. But, you know, you're going to, if it's at Coors, you might see a 13, you know, or the Wrigley, the wind blowing out. You don't see 5s in baseball. It's a narrow range. You don't see 60s in the NFL ever. You don't see 58s anymore. We got there for a couple years. You know, we're seeing the range is narrow. That's the whole point that I'm trying to make. There's not that much elasticity. You can't pull it out forever. So in theory, there should be value on the margins towards the highest totals going over, the lowest totals staying under. That's in theory where the value is supposed to be. And the database shows that's where the value has been. Betting the highest totals over, betting the lowest totals under. That's not a strategy I'm looking to stand in front of. Now, just because I like the Raiders Chargers over this week, that doesn't mean that in a broader sense. And again, it's an opinion. You know, it's not a 5% big ticket bet. It's an opinion on a game. There's a huge difference between the two. So it's definitely a scenario where you can find exceptions to the rule, but in general, you want to be betting the highest totals over, the lowest totals under in any sport, and that doesn't really change. What do you think, Steve?
Well, you know, I use a lot of financial market analogies when I'm handicapping sports, and it's been proven if you buy stocks when they hit an all-time high, you make money. So it's there again, it's very counterintuitive, but there's momentum as well in the markets. And you bring up an excellent point. They can only price it so extreme one way and the other. And what's interesting, you know, I do a lot of public data. The public normally does not like to play like Iowa Hawkeyes under 25. You know, they don't necessarily like to play the Army-Navy games under 28. So you also get some line value for that reason because they can't price it far enough, like you're saying, where it really should be. Like this Pacer game tonight should probably be in the 260 range theoretically. And by the way, that game that stayed under last week, I believe, was around 257.5. But also don't forget that was a neutral court in Las Vegas because it was the semifinals, and that did stay under. The other thing I'll point out as well is that you go through swings here. You know, at the NFL, most of the totals were in the high 40s, 50s just a couple years ago. So, you know, it took a market a little bit longer to react to the fact that these games have gotten so much lower scoring. There's so many bad offensive teams, so many bad quarterbacks all of a sudden. But I also like to use another filter, and this comes into play with the fade the public information. You know, I do the most public plays every week, and I say this in the video. We don't blindly fade the public. The public wins, the public loses. Use it as a filter, a factor. Maybe it keeps you off a game, or maybe it's enough if you're on the fence to get you on a play if it's public or not public. But something else, Teddy, I've started to do with that is you kind of have to throw out the games that have like backup quarterbacks, other situations, because the market moves several points based on that. And we've seen that here once again in this Raider-Charger game, and we talked about it yesterday. The look-ahead line a week ago with Herbert healthy, with the Raiders not playing a 3-0 loss, was 42.5. Then they priced it at 33.5. That's a 9-point adjustment in 1 week. So that's another example where maybe that one was bumped down a little bit too low. And as you said, it's back up to 34. So I think there's a lot of different ways to use this information. But I go back to the Iowa Hawkeyes, 8 straight unders to finish the season. Nothing changed there. Great defensively, bad offensively. Nothing changed. And that's why that continued to work, in my opinion.
Look at this. Someone sent us Johnny Detroit just sent us a chart, NBA totals over the years. That's incredible when you look at some of the numbers. The average total has gone from like 182.5 to 227.5. Okay, over the course of the last 25 years or so, a slow, steady rise. Maybe it tilts back the other way at some point, but it hasn't yet. And of course, a lot of that, the reason that the markets as a whole have moved in that direction is because a whole lot of overs cashed during that span. Whole lot of overs. Great stuff. Thanks for sending that, Johnny D.
Yeah, man, Chartmaster, Johnny Detroit, the human database part 2. No longer Ralph Michaels. Johnny Detroit's been the database this whole time. I kind of had a feeling that's what was happening, and Ralph was just kind of, he was going through Ralph. But no, seriously, we saw a sea change, obviously, about a decade ago with the 3-point shooting in the NBA. That's what changed everything there. Teddy, your thoughts on the NFL on the way out here? Why are games so much lower scoring now? I mean, I just referenced the fact there's so much bad quarterback play. My theory is that it became a pass-heavy league. That's when the scoring went up. And now that it's a pass-heavy league and there's some really bad backup quarterbacks, young quarterbacks, the teams just haven't been able to adapt. I mean, what are your thoughts on why these games have just plummeted so much lower?
So Dave Malinsky, rest in peace, had a theory about that. He said this is coming about 5 years ago. He said you can expect the quarterback play to be dropping, and this is why, because the college offenses are different from the NFL offenses right now, and the skill sets you need to succeed in college are not the same skill sets you need to succeed in the NFL, and the offenses are too different, and it wasn't always that case. I'm going to make a different argument. I'm going to say it has nothing to do with the quarterbacks and everything to do with the offensive lines. This is an offensive line problem that's masquerading as a quarterback problem. And when you look at the injury reports on the offensive line, there's not a team, there's like 2 teams in the league that have a healthy offensive line right now. Everyone's missing 1, 2, 3, 5 starters. The backups aren't as good. The starters aren't great. Elite offensive linemen create elite quarterbacks. Look at Brock Purdy. End of argument. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, and that's why I keep saying, how interesting would it be if C.J. Stroud was on the Panthers, Bryce Young was on the Texans? Would love to see that experiment to see how much of a difference there was this year, between the two of them.
Yeah, sure.
Teddy,
we got to wrap it, Steve. It's time.
Yeah, I was going to say, great talk. I want everyone to comment below. A little homework assignment. Those watching on the replay, thanks for the live chat. But those watching on the replay, comment below. Let us know your thoughts on why NFL games have plummeted in scoring. If you think that will change, is there value still with the under these low totals? Who do you like this week on Sunday in the NFL? Comment below. Thumbs up, like, hit subscribe, and hit the bell for instant alerts. Teddy's opening line report is posted right now. It goes up every Monday. My NFL Fade the Public video will be up this weekend. And don't forget about those solo standalone videos as well for bowl games, every NFL game, daily basketball as well, right here on WagerTalk TV. Yet another reason to hit subscribe and hit the bell for instant alerts. Teddy, the Prez is supposed to be back tomorrow, but he said he might not be back tomorrow. It's all up to customs. We will find out later tonight when he tries to cross the border. So I might or might not see you tomorrow, my man.
Sure. And if you're in the chat, if you want, you can also tell us who do you think would be worse to be married to, me or Prez. You can throw
I didn't see as many of those replies as I was hoping for, actually. I was a little disappointed. Comment
no one
below
wants to marry either one of us. That's
Teddy
why. It's a nightmare scenario.
Or you can take
that said, that's going to wrap.
Take the draw.
Yeah, exactly. Draw, and draws the chalk.
Draw minus 5,000.
That's going to wrap it for the Wednesday edition. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend with us here on WagerTalk Today. We'll do it again, same time, same channel, tomorrow, 9 a.m. here on the left coast, noon for you back east. Between now and then, best of luck, and I hope you win your bets.